I'm not one to believe in conspiracy theories. A lot of them tend to be a misinterpretation of natural phenomena. One popular example, and I'm sorry if you believe this, is chemtrails. It's literally planes leaving a trail of condensation. If the government really wanted to administer a chemical to the population, they'd find a better way. If you were to disperse chemicals in the air like that, it would be too dissipated from that high up to affect anything. It's like peeing in an Olympic swimming pool and expecting it to reach the person on the other side. The same with weather manipulation. Anything that could conceivably be released from a plane and cause low pressure systems to form would need to cause an exothermic reaction so great and so visibly bright that it could not possibly be as subtle as a thin cloud of dust. The reason I bring this up is, for me to believe a conspiracy theory, it has to have logical standards. Another one is flat Earth. There are ways to prove to yourself, in your backyard using shadows, that the Earth is round. They figured it out centuries ago, even before they knew the Earth orbited the Sun and not the other way around. I think people get a feeling that something is up with our conceptualization of reality, but they can't pinpoint what exactly it is, so this is what they end up falling into. Some conspiracies are totally real though. As more and more evidence comes out, it's increasingly obvious that John F. Kennedy wasn't taken out by a lone actor. Same goes for Martin Luther King. MKUltra is another famous conspiracy theory that ended up being true. They basically brainwashed people to see if they could, and one of the test subjects became the Unabomber. He was a genius who wrote about how the rise of technology would be the downfall of humans and tried to violently end that progress through a 2 decades-long bombing campaign. I agree somewhat with his points, but I definitely don't agree with how he went about aiming to solve the problem. Anyway, the conspiracy I'm going to talk about today is Project Stargate, and its end result, which is the Gateway Tapes. I've been using the Gateway Tapes for about a year, among other things, and my outlook on life has completely flipped on its head. Basically, if you've ever heard of binaural beats, this is similar. I'll go more into the benefits shortly. First, you need to know the important background information. Robert Monroe was a broadcasting executive who made his fortune in the radio industry. After becoming a millionaire at age 40, Monroe began exploring the effects of sound patterns on human consciousness. The start of his strange experiences occurred in the spring of 1958, after he had been trying to increase mental retention by listening to a sleep learning tape while other sensory inputs were minimized. It was then he suffered a severe cramp in the solar plexus, which lasted for 10.5 hours. In the next few weeks, he began feeling the effects of what we now call sleep paralysis and the sensation of his body vibrating all over intensely. After determining it wasn't a medical issue, he decided he wouldn't resist these instances, even though he wasn't exactly sure what was going on. Several months later, when the vibrations began, he moved onto the edge of his bed and pushed his fingers into the rug that was on the floor next to it. His hand went through the rug, then through the floor, then through the ceiling beneath. The next time the phenomenon occurred, he found himself on his ceiling looking down at his bed. He was shocked to find another man in his bed with his wife, but as he looked closer, he realized the man was himself, and he was now out of his body. These accounts and many others are collected in his 3 books: Journeys Out of the Body, Far Journeys, and Ultimate Journey. After the publication of his first book, he started a small research lab with the goal of inducing these out-of-body states using sound technology, which they were eventually able to achieve, and this is where the conspiracy part of the story begins to take place. The government caught wind that the Monroe Institute, as it was now called, was able to train people to gain psychic abilities. This was in the late 70s, so around the start of the Cold War, with the government trying to gain every advantage it could over the Soviet Union. This was also why a lot of the most far-out government projects are from around this time period. Anyway, they sent 2 agents, one of them being a physicist. They underwent the training process and experienced altered states of consciousness from using the Institute's hemisync technology. Hemisync was the conclusive product of Monroe's research efforts. To put it simply, they are audio tapes of sound fluctuations that produce 2 slightly different tones in each ear that are said to synchronize the 2 hemispheres of the brain, hence the name hemisync. The agents reportedly experienced profound shifts in perception, including sensations of floating outside their bodies. They also described the feeling that they were moving beyond physical limitations, potentially accessing distant locations non-physically. Their ability to perceive information beyond normal sensory input was reportedly improved, indicating increased intuition. While these experiences were fascinating, officially the government ultimately determined that they were too subjective and inconsistent for reliable intelligence gathering. Unofficially, however, there are many former agents who have come out and claimed the government, after the visit to the Monroe Institute, continued to experiment with out-of-body reconnaissance and still uses it to this day. But you can research that yourself. The original Stargate Project report was declassified in 1995 and is quite the interesting read as the physicist agent attempts to describe the kind of holographic universe that could allow these experiences to occur. Whenever I've mentioned my experiences with the gateway tapes on this channel, I never went into too much detail as I wasn't sure if people would be interested in that. But after my last video talking about the astral world in relation to idea formation, people wanted more. So here it is. I began using the gateway tapes because I saw a video on here about Project Stargate and got interested in the subject. At first I was uneasy about using the tapes because I wasn't sure what kind of experiences I would have or what effect it would impose on my consciousness. It also didn't help that the buzz surrounding the subject was from a bunch of conspiracy channels that like to play scary music in the background and use creepy imagery of CIA research dungeons. But after reading some testimonials from other users, I decided I would hesitantly give it a try. The gateway tapes are the consumer version of the original HemiSync tapes that those agents were using back in the 70s. The program is separated into 7 waves, with each wave containing 6 tapes. The waves contain training from Robert Monroe himself, whose voice guides you along and introduces different concepts to master or improve upon with each tape. The ultimate goal is to get you to realize that we are more than physical matter by doing practical exercises in order to prove this idea to yourself. I cannot personally attest to everything explained in the tapes as being possible because I've only been able to perform a few of the skills. In March of 2024, I used the tapes for the first time and I made my way through the first wave. The first wave is mainly about getting your brain hemispheres to synchronize. Now, I'm not a neuroscientist, so I don't know if brainwave synchronization is the exact biological mechanic at work here, but you definitely do feel like something in your brain is becoming aligned. Like there's an ever so slight difference in the way you are perceiving not just your senses or time, but reality in general. It's like the feeling of getting a new computer and everything runs super smoothly. As I made my way through the waves, I wasn't sure if anything else was actually happening because while my mood was improving and I felt sharper, I wasn't experiencing anything out of the ordinary. Until one day the vibrations started. If I had to describe the vibrations, they are like if you turn on your washer or dryer and lie down on top of it. They are very intense, and I thought my house was shaking due to an earthquake or maybe an unscheduled demolition was occurring. I started getting the vibrations frequently, but only during my sessions with the tapes and not while I was going to sleep. In addition to the vibrations, I started getting auditory hallucinations, like someone was throwing stuff around in my living room, or people talking in the next room but not being able to make out what was being said. I understand if this sounds scary, but I promise it isn't. When you listen to the tapes, you are in a very calm state, and there's an intuitive understanding that those things are not actually happening. It continued on like this for a month, with a few notable occurrences, such as the time when I felt through my mind's eye, only my head tilt and leave my body, breaking through some kind of surface, and suddenly feeling the presence of a bunch of people in my room. Again, this wasn't scary. It was a feeling akin to walking into a crowded coffee shop. Nothing malevolent, it just happened to be in my room in the middle of the night. I also had strange visuals a few times behind my closed eyes, almost like I could begin to make out different shapes and landscapes made of colors the human eye could not perceive. But this video is getting a little longer than I would like, so I'll just close with my most notable experience so far, which is in November of 2024, I finally left my body while I was trying to go to sleep. I didn't even do it on purpose. I was falling asleep, then I had a glowing sensation in my solar plexus, right where the diaphragm is, and I felt 2 arms come up from under me as I was sleeping on my side and lift me up. It felt like I was being carried, and I realized that it was finally happening. I left my body and started floating up slowly, as one of those shiny grocery store balloons would if it was slightly out of helium. I reached my ceiling and felt static where there should have been a feeling of touching a solid surface. I knelt upside down for a moment, and had the idea that I wanted to float back down, so I did, and went back into my body. I jolted up and couldn't go back to sleep for at least another 30 minutes. I've been trying to do it again ever since with no luck. But I've just scratched the surface on this subject, so there will be more on the metaphysical implications soon. Thank you for watching, and if you don't believe me, find them and try it for yourself. Just don't expect quick results.